Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1838A, and today's date is April 10th, 2019, and the title of the episode is The Economic Plan is Getting Ready to Go to the Next Level. Now, we know that Robert Mueller has been investigating Donald Trump for over 2 years now, and has concluded that there is no case to answer on his colluding with Russia during his election campaign. Given that news, you would expect the markets to have soared. Instead, they've reacted by tanking, and there's nothing the markets hate more than political uncertainty. Now is not a good time to be fully committed to stocks. Gold has rallied along with silver this year, and it might be time to think about putting some of your money into precious metals. If you call Noble Gold, you can speak to one of their advisors about the pros and cons of buying precious metals. So click the link below to get your free gold IRA guide, or just call 877-646-5347 and make sure to mention X22 Report to get the free gold investment guide. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we're starting to see everything fall in place, and we're starting to see the central bankers do exactly what we thought they were going to do. It's unbelievable. Now, if we head out to the UK, we see that the European Union leaders, they're going to offer Britain a long extension to the UK. They're hoping to delay the Brexit until 2020. I mean, this is just unbelievable. This is exactly what we thought they were going to do. They don't want the UK to leave. They will do everything in their power to keep them in limbo. And we see already that the United States, they are preparing for a hard Brexit, which means a no deal. I think that point is going to come where the people of the UK say, you know something, we're done here. We see Nigel Farage. He's pushing this entire movement to have a no deal. And it looks like we might be heading in that direction. And we know that the central bankers, once they lose one country, once they lose control, this is when they are exposed. And this is their worst fear. This is why they have events to cover up their entire system imploding on itself, because they don't want the world to know that we would do a lot better without them. And there's so much evidence that shows how bad the central bankers are to the people of the world. If we look at the United States, for example, government officials have been pushing to increase the minimum wage. And they've been saying, yes, we need to raise the minimum wage. It has to be done. We need it up to $15. This way, everyone will be better off. Now, I remember way back when I first started working at a supermarket, I was making $3.35. That was the minimum wage. Now, here we are today. They're pushing for $15. Do you really think that this is going to really help people? Or do we need to go to the source of the problem? Why did we go from $3.35 all the way up to $15? Because the value of the dollar decreased over this period of time. And what's the problem? It's the central bank. Now, since they started to raise the minimum wage, look what has happened. Small businesses are being forced to lay off workers in order to comply with the law demanding an increase in wages. And what about those people that were working who still had the job? Well, they cut those people's hours. And a lot of the small businesses, they're going out of business. They can't afford it. I mean, similar effects were also seen after employers were dictated to comply with Obamacare. Instead of giving full-time employees health insurance, what did they do? They cut them down to part-time. Every time the government or the central bank gets involved, guess what happens? Businesses react in the opposite way. Because we shouldn't be dictating and creating rules for businesses. Businesses should be operating in an open, free market, allowing them to do what they do best. Make a profit, hire more people. Make a profit, hire more people. Make more money, then they can pay the people a higher salary. Instead, the government is just saying, listen, we don't care what your profits are. You're going to pay these people this much money. And look what happens. They lose work. So really, all of this comes back to what? The central bank. The central bank system that we're in today does not work with the people at all. That, again, is the source of the problem. It's the same problem we've been having. And we need to get rid of the central bank to make things a lot better. Now, what's very interesting is that the Federal Reserve, they are following what the Patriots are telling them to do. Do not raise interest rates in 2019. So guess what? There are no interest rates that are going to be increased in the year of 2019. And we know that other central banks, well, they don't do things without the Federal Reserve. So the ECB right now, what are they doing? Are they raising rates? No. They decided that they're going to keep their policy unchanged. No changes to rates. We're just going to keep them where they are, and that's that. I wonder what the Fed is doing. Oh, that's right. They're keeping exactly where they are. Now remember, Trump has been calling on the Fed to lower the rates. Why? Because he needs to keep the system going long enough to have the next election. And then after the election, I don't really think he cares. I think he's going to go right for the central bank. And he's going to go after them with everything that he has. And we see that there's a problem with the Federal Reserve, with them managing interest rates. It is attracting new bank entrants, but the Federal Reserve does not want their business. So to fix this problem, it has proposed rule changes that govern the way it pays banks interest on reserves. Now, the plan would allow it to pay different banks different rates on reserves, including a rate of 0%. The Federal Reserve would choose which banks qualify for a high rate, which qualify for a low rate, and which will earn nothing. These changes would give the Federal Reserve a new dangerous power to use interest on reserves to choose winners and losers, including blocking new bank entrants it deems problematic. In 2006, when Congress gave the Federal Reserve authority to pay bank interest on reserves, it never imagined the Federal Reserve would use the authority to pay favored banks higher interest rates on their reserves. Congress needs to revisit this entire thing. Remember, yesterday in the report, we said that Congress has completely lost control of the Federal Reserve. Trump and the Patriots, they are controlling the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve is listening to the Patriots now. Because remember, as soon as Q told us that they have the problem handled with the Federal Reserve raising interest rates in the year of 2019, guess what happened? All of a sudden, the Federal Reserve said, you know something? We're going to be in a holding pattern right now. Now Trump is calling on the Federal Reserve to lower rates. I would guess that by the end of this year, we might see the Federal Reserve lower rates. Now remember, the deep state and the central bank's plan was to bring down the economy and blame this on Trump. They were going to do this during the 2020 election because this would help the deep state also. And this way, it would explain why the entire world was crashing. Remember, the central banks are exposed right now. They don't want the world to know that they're the ones who created this problem. And now they have a bigger problem because now the Patriots are in control of the Federal Reserve. And what do the central banks around the world do? They can't do anything. They're in a holding pattern. And they're still saying, well, it's the tariffs. That's the problem. The tariffs are the thing that's making the entire world slow. No. That's not the problem. The entire world was slowing way before Trump. But the mainstream media, the IMF, and the rest kept on saying, no, everything is fine. Look, it's fantastic. Think about it. The IMF came out during Obama's term telling us that we're going to hit 4% or 3.5% GDP. And then every month leading up to when they were supposed to announce the GDP numbers, they lowered it, they lowered it, they lowered it, they lowered it. If you look at the European countries, they haven't improved. Why do you think the central banks around the world lowered interest rates? Is that because the economy was doing fantastically well? No, they lowered the interest rates because they knew that there was too much debt. If they kept the interest rates where they were, every single country would implode. And that's not the central bank's plan. The central bank's plan is to keep countries in limbo, to keep them on the hook for the debt and having them pay the debt and have this middle ground. They don't want them to go down, because then everyone would say, well, wait a minute. The central bank was managing the economy and the entire country just fell apart. I mean, that wouldn't look good for them. And this is their biggest fear right now. They don't have control of what's going to happen next. Before, they thought they had control. They never thought Clinton would lose, and they thought they were going to have their event. Now they don't have any of this. And remember going back in time when they said, these big banks, they're too big to fail? Well, they're saying it about the Federal Reserve now, that the Federal Reserve is too big to fail. Well, no, it's not. Nothing is ever too big to fail. That's a made-up term that they used to explain away why they didn't let these banks fail. These insurance companies fail. The automobile manufacturers fail. I mean, have you ever heard of a government bailing out all these businesses? I mean, do the small businesses get the same treatment? I mean, they're employing people, or do they just let them fail? In a true and open system, businesses thrive and businesses fail. And when a business fails, a new business takes its place. We've seen this over the many, many years. We've seen companies come and go. And guess what? We all survived. What they were trying to do is they were trying to hold on to their system. And they didn't want the big banks to go down, because that's how they controlled the system. Think about it. Think about if AIG failed, where they had all this insurance with all these banks and everything else. The whole system would have imploded. The people would have rebuilt it without the big banks, without the central bank. But they didn't want that to happen. Now we're in a situation where everything's just a lot worse. We're in a bigger illusion. And thank God that Clinton wasn't elected. Thank God that Trump was elected, because they're planning to turn everything around. And the Federal Reserve is not too big to fail. They need to fail. Remember, once the dollar starts losing value, once everything starts to fall apart, the main ingredient to all of this is faith in the dollar, in the Federal Reserve note. Once countries, once people start to lose faith in this Federal Reserve note, it's game over. And once it starts to decline, the credibility of the Fed also disappears. It really doesn't take that much to bring it down. It takes a lot to keep it up, to keep it the way it is today. This is why they had to send armed forces, the military, to all these different countries. This is why they had to force these countries into keeping the Federal Reserve note and to continually use the petrodollar. It's much harder to keep this system going than it is to let it fail. It's much easier to let it fail. And you can see throughout time what they've done to keep the system alive, their system. This is not a people system. We didn't want the system. We wanted the system of the Founding Fathers. And now it's all coming to an end. And we can see the plan is moving to the next level. The plan now is control the Fed, make them do what you want, keep the economy where it is, make the statistical numbers look fantastic, and put this block up so the mainstream media, the central banks, can't do anything about it, and rob them of the event that they were hoping to get. The plan has removed all of this. The plan is now going to the next level. The plan is now going to expose what the central banks have done over time. And this is coming very, very soon. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.